So far in Fallout 4, we have only looked at one school. Well, sort of. That was Vault 75, and it was an absolute shit show. This time, however, the school we are looking at is unaffiliated with them, Shaw High School, located near Fallon Mall, and the death maze that will soon be looked at. So you're probably thinking, well, I'm sure this one turned out okay, right? You're so wrong. So the place has been inhabited by the most militant of all the homeless in the Commonwealth, supermutants. They've decorated the place with their customary bags of gore, though to be fair to them, it seems like the place may have went tits up before they got here. Immediately, we will be looking at some terminal entries which will help fill us in on what went on here. So the only entries available initially are the memos to the staff from the principal. The first one begins by congratulating the staff on the recent rise of test scores that has taken place in the school. However, this pleasant message is quickly offset by the principal saying he will accept an award as a result of this. Also that he will leave out most people in his speech, as it would take far too much time to thank everyone. So this entry quickly paints him as a fucking asshole. The next page is him addressing some rumours about possible budget increases. He says there may be some, but that they will be small and used for equipment, i.e. no pay increases for you. He then says he'll allocate some of the money to a very short staff mixer. That seems so lackluster it reminds me of the staff picnic in Dunwich Moors, and they were sacrificing people there. The next entry is where I started to get suspicious. The new equipment that the slight budget increase was meant to finance is delayed, but don't worry, he has top men looking into it. He then goes on to say that the current equipment works fine, and that it's the equipment that got them the score rises, even though in the previous entry he says it was all thanks to the staff. He then finishes with a cheeky, if it ain't broke don't fix it. So to translate all this from snake in the grass ease to English, I didn't order the equipment, sure just make use of what we already have, I want to misappropriate these funds. The next one, entitled Read Only, is the best of the lot. So all the teachers are to dismiss their students and leave quietly. Do not question the message or disturb him for clarification, as his toupee needs adjusting. Students of Mr. Wellborn's class are to be given a ludicrous greeting scheme. So far, so good. Furthermore, Principal Tanner shall henceforth be known as Principal Butttoots. Then the person behind this, Rusty Burton, fucks it all up by sticking his name at the end of the message, clearly identifying himself. He also identified himself to be as dumb as a spade. The final memo is the principal ripping into the teachers for being so gullible, and not saying that the previous one was fake. To me, this suggests that they think he's such an arse that the previous memo seemed in character, but that went right over his head, just like his toupee. He then tells them to change their passwords, as the students manage to find out the default. Lastly, our hero Rusty is screwed, and seems to have been suspended for a few weeks, all because he chose to gloat, instead of remaining anonymous. So, due to a bug, I assume if you go back on any terminal, you can access all the entries that are only meant to be available on the principal's terminal. Let's take a look at his personal stuff. First is an entry from August 2076. Tanner is feeling pressured as the superintendent is freaking out over his test scores. He hates his job, yet he doesn't want to lose it, probably because he is such a clown nowhere else will hire him. Except one place, a haven for clowns, Vault-Tec. It seems he may have worked there, and if that's the case, he was so incompetent he was fired from them. Jesus! He then says he wants to beat the kids, but that the parents might get a little upset over it, as is natural. Next is a small list with Rusty's name on it, so it appears at the time of this message he was not a student. October comes around and we hear of the genius plan that raised the test scores for the first time. He took some of the rougher students and got them to distribute mentats throughout the school in order to increase the cognitive function of the students. This will raise the test scores and net him more funding, which of course is exactly what happened. His last personal entry finally tells us his long-term plan: steal the funding and retire. Not too complicated. He plans to spend the summer away from his wife. Maybe cheating, as I don't know what the fun refers to. Lastly, he says he has to meet Burton, though the details of that meeting only become clear later on. Finally, we have a letter from the superintendent that confirms what we had already begun to suspect. The school, in light of its improved grades, got a substantial budget increase, one that was meant to go towards greater wages for all the lovely teachers. Tanner was already getting a pay increase as well, which just shows how greedy he was. But that wasn't enough, and he decided to take the lion's share of the budget increase, which was probably anywhere from a few thousand to several tens of thousands, all for his selfish self. We can find the room where the majority of the mentats were stored in here, the principal's office, as the previous one was most likely his assistant's. As you can see, there's no mentats left. However, this is only because I have a severe drug problem. They were here. Also, if the bottle under his desk and the ones in this closet are anything to go on, he had a bit of an addiction as well. To the sauce. Next, we can take a look at the cafeteria, the place where all the wee shites have stuffed their gobs. It's completely wrecked, having suffered badly from the signature super mutant home makeover. What with your bags of flesh and your totems of gore and feces. It seems like they made some attempts to fortify the position. Just outside the cafeteria are the first lockers that we'll take a look at. For the most part, it's standard. Some food, some sweets, the odd pack of cigarettes that point out this child had a smoking problem, things that you would expect in a child's locker. However, as we will see, some of them contained a lot more than that. Be mindful to check behind these Nuka-Cola machines, by the way, there is some quantum to be had. Upstairs are a few more lockers, this time more interesting. The first one has a teddy, some flowers and chocolates. Now, this wasn't near Valentine's Day, when everything was evacuated, i.e. when the bombs dropped in October, so this must have been a simple crush, but it's pretty cute. I wish we could pick up the note and read the barely legible scrawlings of a youth in love. The classroom also gives us an indication of the size of the school population, as it's one of only a few. The one next to it also has a desk belonging to a possible alcoholic. There's also a yardstick. I don't think an alcoholic teacher and a yardstick mix very well, to be honest. With this side of the building out of the way, we can cross over into the next part, but not before passing through here, that contains some of the first evidence of the mentat trafficking that was going on amongst the students. I think it's likely they would have set up here, possibly during lunch or break, and sold them to students, avoiding the teachers in the process. So young, so enterprising. It's odd though, as the staff break room is found right next to where they were selling mentats, and just like under that teacher's desk, is full of the drink. I think this is probably a pretty good indication of why the test scores were so low at this school. The teachers had drinking problems and couldn't be arsed. There is a chance this could be the remains of the staff mixer that was mentioned in Memos, but the quantity of drink here, and for a short party at 6 in the evening, is still shocking if that is the case. On this side of the building, the top floor lockers offer us a little bit more. The presence of mentats is more widespread in these ones, along with some other drugs as well, though the jet's weird as it's a post-war drug, not pre-war. Bit of oversight there, Bethesda. This next classroom contains the terminal entries of the boy who broke into the principal's terminal, Rusty, and the progression of the messages is very interesting, as they give us some insight into how mentats affect a person. His terminal had several custom pieces of software that afforded him certain user rights, though as we will see, he did not implement them himself. His warning message is yet another example of how low his intelligence was when the first of these entries was created, which we will look at now. He bullied someone called Clayton to set the terminal up for him, which explains how he ended up with so many features that were clearly beyond his ability to implement. Also, he goes to therapy, which really explains a lot. So Rusty was involved in Tanner's deal, and his side of the bargain is revealed in this entry. In exchange for selling the mentats, he gets a longer lunch period, and some things are removed from his permanent record. It appears he was already in the business of dealing some substances before the mentats, though this is the first time he's taken them. Except they haven't actually begun to affect him yet, but as his later terminal entries will show, that changes very soon. It starts to show in the next entry, as his grades have already begun to improve, as has his overall spelling and punctuation. He has also begun to dig into whatever it is that Tanner's been doing, and feels like he's getting close, once again, due to the mentats. So now, his increase in intelligence is obvious. A vast increase and change in his writing style can clearly be seen, and he's figured out Tanner's plan in its entirety. Even more so, he's considering how to use all of this to his advantage. He even refers to himself before he took the mentats as Old Rusty. His plan is fully outlined in the next entry. He managed to get verification that his theory was correct, and evidence in the form of the large volume of mentats that I took all of. He wants to meet Tanner in the library, presumably to blackmail and extort him for a share of the profits. We will see the result of this soon in the library. Also, he wants to buy a telescope. So Rusty has become a heavy user of mentats, and it has greatly improved his cognitive ability. Though what side effects he's suffering as a result, we may never know. A science lab lies at the end of this corridor, and for some reason there's a skeletal hand lying on one of the tables. I'm not sure whether it's an actual human one or not, and if it is, then this school is even more fucked up than I think it is right now. Next up is the library, which serves to bring this whole tale to its conclusion. So I assume there was once another floor or balcony to this area, and over time, or due to the massive weight of the supermutants, it has collapsed. They seem to have chosen this area as their base of operations, or as an area to take a last stand in. It fits the role perfectly as there's only one entrance, and the shells would afford some degree of protection. This small reading area is where we find the last part of this tale, in the form of a holotape entitled Property of R. Burton.
Alright, Burton. I'm here. Hurry up. Out with it. I have a lot of plans for this summer, and none of them involve chatting with you.
Why, Ronald, I'm hurt. Skipping the pleasantries and getting right down to business. And after all we've accomplished together this semester.
For the last time, you little snot, it's Principal Tanner.
Fine, Principal Tanner. I'll make this quick. You've been giving me mentats to distribute to the students quietly and under the nose of the faculty. I have. Because of this, test scores have skyrocketed. The school board has noticed. We received quite an increase in funding, but the faculty doesn't know. No one here knows except you. And now, me. You've been skimming off the top and pocketing most of the funds. I want 50% of what you're embezzling. We'll go to Superintendent Marcella with this.
What? How did you... When did you get so smart?
You've been giving me brain pills every week. What did you expect, you pathetic little man?
Well, so what if it's all true? No one's going to believe you. You're just a kid, and I'm the principal, and more importantly, an adult.
Oh, I think they'll believe me, Ronald. Especially after they hear you admit everything in your own words.
What are you talking about? Wait. Is that a holotape? You son of a...
So Rusty sounds like a wab. His tone is bleeding with arrogance and patronization, and frankly, I don't want him to have gotten away with this. And to be honest, I don't think he did. He planned to get Tanner to confess so that he could record it on a holotape and use that as leverage. The tape cuts off, and that's it. I looked everywhere, but I was not able to find a body or any indication of what might have happened to Rusty. What we do know is that he was smart, so he wouldn't have been so stupid as to assume that Tanner would just let him go. He must have taken precautions of some sort to ensure his safety, even though I really wish Tanner did just brain the wee shite. The final room here has more mentats and then some decent loot that you can take. Then we just have one last place to look at, the most disturbing place of all in the building. So this is located just off of the kitchen, a basement area that has seen the homely touch of a supermutant. It's full of gore, flesh and blood. Some of the cooking pots look like they were utilised to prepare some food for the supermutants. Or perhaps the pots were not used by them, but instead used by the individual who made their lair down in this hole. So yup, another psychotic, possibly serial, killer. Bodies are hung from hooks on one side of the wall, and with all the blood on the floor, I think they might have been hung up to bleed out. The individual in the corner is also dead, and based on the handcuffs on their wrists, they were cuffed to something, possibly the railing with the other two bodies, and then they were killed and moved here. I believe the two heads in this bin belonged to those two bodies, though I don't know why they had their heads taken off and the other two bodies did not. Two bloody handprints can be found in the wall next to what looks like notes, but we can't read them. I'm not too sure who this killer was, but they may have some relation to the death maze near Fallon that we will look at in a later video. Just keep this place in mind until then. Shaw High School, a school with failing test scores, possibly as a result of the alcoholism that may have affected more than one teacher. Possibly because they just did not care. Principal Tanner was pressured by the superintendent and hatched a plan. He would distribute mentats to several of the detention regulars and get them to sell them to the students, thereby raising the test scores and getting the school a large budget increase. One of these students was Rusty, who, after embarrassing the principal, was drafted in to sell them. He began taking the mentats, and from there we can see a steady increase in his intelligence. Eventually, he figured out Tanner's plan and confronted him in the library, getting him to confess on holotape. His ultimate fate is unknown, as no body could be found, and this was over 2 centuries ago. But I would be surprised if Tanner didn't do something to shut him up. But Rusty was a product of his surroundings, and in the end, the school was to blame for how he turned out. Also, some fucked up shenanigans transpired in that basement. A scheming principal, a chemically enhanced idiot, and another mass murderer. I hope you liked this look at all of it. If you did like it, give the video a like, and if you want regular updates, subscribe. Any suggestions for lore or future videos should be left in the comments below. Better yet, go onto my subreddit so we can discuss them in more detail. It's linked in the description. If you wish to, you can support me on Patreon, which is also linked in the description. Go have a gander at the rewards. Follow me on Twitter or Facebook to get regular updates or have a wee chat. Any business you wish to discuss, email me at thenthapple.business@gmail.com and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I hope you enjoyed the episode and I hope to see you in the next one. And until then, goodbye.